welcome. This is the second in the series of Novatti webinars, and this one's the modern B2B payments era, remote and agile work. So I just wanted to give Novatti a quick victory lap because they had a very, very impressive quarter. Sales revenue, 4.9, increase of 63% quarter on quarter, 18.4 mil in total revenue, up 50%, ninth straight quarter of record sales revenue, and they've just raised $40 million and acquired nearly 20% in Recon Limited, a accounting software provider. So I just wanted to give Peter Cook and Leo a big round of applause because that's one hell of an effort for their business and especially given the times that we're in. So well done to them and their respective teams. In the first webinar that we did, we showed you how the crypto cards work and how BNPL cards work. And the response to that from payments nerds, thank you Duncan Curry, wearing the t-shirt today, was a bit overwhelming. So we're going to revisit that again quickly because the topic was pretty hot. And if you missed it last time, we'll just give you a quick recap. After that, we'll go into today's topic, which is the payments as a service webinars, and we're looking at opportunities that this sort of solution can bring in the world of B2B payments. So, to give you some context, it's the same solution, but with different applications beyond crypto and BNPL. So the reason we're doing this is because, as you can probably see, we're all stuck at home. Except Duncan, I think, but that's okay. He's allowed to be out and about. The rest of Australia seems to be locked down. So this is a very important topic in our view. So look, at any time during the webinar, if you want to ask a question, there's a chat box that you can ask a question in, and we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. And I think that's sort of about it for me at the moment. So what I'll do now, I'll throw over to Julian McInerney from Visa. So Julian, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of rundown what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Brad. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Novatti, for inviting me to this webinar series. It is great to be here and speaking to you all about what I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, is an exciting space, and it's a huge area of opportunity for Visa. My role at Visa is I'm the head of our business solutions team for this part of the market, which is Australia, New Zealand, and South Pacific, and that involves really looking after our core business products, our business debit and credit cards for SMEs, corporate and purchasing cards for larger businesses. We work with banks, of course, Fintechs, neobanks, and great partners like Novatti. Under that remit is also a lot of value-added features that we put around the payment, which we'll get a chance to talk to later today. And we've got a lot of partners that we also manage in this space. I've been in that role for 18 months now and came from NAB, which is Australia's leading business bank. And so I've had a lot of experience there working with businesses. My role was in innovation and partnerships. And so I was working with a lot of businesses and also Visa, I might say. So it was sort of a natural progression to come to Visa into this role. I'm excited by the prospect of helping businesses digitize. We recently did a survey actually of businesses in Australia, and over 80% at the moment are digitising their businesses, and 31% are looking to digitise their back-end payment systems, which is where we get particularly excited, which is great. And so, as I said, it's an area of great focus for Visa at the moment. The total market for business payments globally we see as 120 trillion. So there's a lot of focus at Visa to try and move further into that market by improving our propositions and helping businesses digitize.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think you know my feelings on this, Julian, that it's undercooked, right? It's a market that we've been consumer focused, and I think the business space is really the next big thing to move. So I think right place, right time. And I think we've got some NAB folks who are SVP. So if there's any NAB folks in the audience, hello. Thank you, Julian. I'll move on to Catherine Bell. Kath, you're the Novatti representative, so how about you tell us a little about what you're doing at Novatti and a little bit a little bit about you, please.
Thanks, Brad. Super excited to be here today. A little nervous, so be gentle with me. I recently joined Novatti as the issuing product and delivery manager, and as the title suggests, I'm responsible for all the issuing products and ensuring our clients' programs are delivered in a seamless and timely manner. I've been in payments for quite some time with a particular focus on schemes. I've joined Novatti from after 15 years at Visa, most recently the head of the prepaid portfolio for Australia and New Zealand. And before that, I was based out of Singapore for 5 years, managing the prepaid portfolio for the Asia Pacific. For those that know me, know that I have a love and passion for prepaid products, but enough about me, instead a little bit about us. Novatti Group is a global payment tech company established in 1996 and listed on the ASX in 2016. Our solutions now cover billing automation, voucher systems, remittance, acquiring, and of course card issuing services, which I represent. In 2019, we became a Visa principal issuer. In essence, we are an end-to-end program manager offering a variety of payment solutions that include a white label prepaid Visa card, an app, and a card management portal. We focus on tech and compliance to ensure our customers are up and running in record time. Playing a large role in the fintech space, you most recently would have seen that Novatti is behind crypto spend, and I wish Andrew and Richard much success with their program. With an experienced team in payments and multiple innovation solutions, combined with our compliance capabilities, we have the customer's needs covered from end to end. We are pleased to include a partner spotlight into our webinar today and are joined by Duncan Curry, head of Marqeta Australia. I've had the pleasure of knowing Duncan for many years now. Marqeta is a US-based global processor and our partner for BIN sponsorship in Australia, so look forward to Duncan joining us later on.
So Duncan's the resident payments nerd. Say hello, Duncan.
I think we got the T-shirt to go with it there, Brad. There you go.
I want that T-shirt, mate. That's well done and welcome. Thank you all very much. Thanks to Marqeta and Visa for letting you join us today, and of course, Catherine, thanks for giving us a bit of a rundown on Novatti. So. For those of you who don't know me, I've been around in this space. I actually started back 25 years ago, which gives you an idea of how old I am. I actually started at Diners Club in Melbourne with Grant Halverson. So if you see Grant on LinkedIn, and he still treats me like the office junior, despite the fact I'm several years older than that. I've worked at ANZ, HSBC, JP Morgan. I had a stint at MasterCard. I have actually worked at NAB, Julian, and I'm sure we probably all know a lot of people in the same boat. So at the moment, I'm working for myself. I'm independent, so I get to say and do a lot of things that I haven't been able to in the past. I've got a few clients at the moment. One's a fintech in Brisbane that you've probably seen me write about. They're doing some really good things in bill payments. And there's a couple of others as well that we can talk about at another time. But as you know, my passion is the Aussie payment space, and I have some strong opinions, which you probably all know about, so we don't need to labour on that. So welcome, everybody. And look, let's get into this. Julian, I'm going to throw to you. I think we need to talk virtual accounts. So how about we jump into that, eh?
That sounds great, Brad. So maybe we should start with what is a virtual account and a virtual card. So for those of you who don't know, that this is the ability to issue a temporary card that isn't a physical card, so that can be used either pushed to your digital wallet or used for online purchases. And this is something that's really taking off, and this is one of those value add enhancements that I sort of mentioned earlier in the talk. So really, what we do at Visa to enable that is the issuer will request the card, and we're able to produce this temporary card with card number, expiry date, CVV. And the way it will usually work is it's in the business context is it'll be a feature within an expense management system, and so you would have an employee requesting a virtual card through that system. That would go to the approver. A small business case, it might be the business owner, and a large business, it would be a financial controller who would either approve or decline that request. And the way that these cards can be set up is really flexible. So you could request just for a specific transaction with, and have controls around the actual approver could put controls around it needs to be spent at this time, for this amount with this merchant, or you can have a request, I need marketing a budget for the next month, and you've got a cap and then the amount of again, so maybe merchant categories into which that spend can be made, or it might be spend for travel. For instance, you might be a work trip, and so you can be issued a card which will be pushed to your digital wallet for that particular travel. So it really is a great new innovation that we're seeing, and Novatti is a great proponent of that virtual card capability, and it's really that combination of the ability to do the virtual cards and to give the business control over how those cards are spent. Is something I personally think that this is going to be the future of corporate cards. That going forward, most employees are going to have the virtual card capability and not necessarily the physical card. There might be instances where you need a physical card. For instance, you're travelling overseas to a region that doesn't have great acceptance for tap and pay. But I think where we're heading is that virtual card will become the predominant method of corporate payment. Yeah,
I agree. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one, Julian. Because if for those of us who've been in corporate, you'd be on board. Part of your onboarding process is you apply for the corporate card, then you wait a week, and so on and so forth. And this sort of eliminates all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe another great use case I should mention, Brad, is the ability to digitise. I mentioned earlier that we're helping businesses digitise their payment processes. And one of the big pain points is the procurement process and how long it takes and how manual it is. And so the ability to use virtual cards to be issued for particular supplier payments and have that approval process pretty seamless, that it's a ping and a request with the information around that particular purchase, that you can use this within your procurement system and really saves a lot of time. And that's both at the large corporate end right down to even a sole trader who might have they might have a bookkeeper doing their payments. But won't necessarily want to issue them with a plastic card, have them use their company cards. So being able to issue those one-off virtual cards is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, if my accountant's watching, I do trust her a bit more than that. But I think
not everyone does. But
what I want to zoom in on with this is what's interesting with this is it's counterintuitive as to how consumer cards work, because consumer cards we want everyone to use it everywhere, but with these cards we're actually turning that on its head and saying actually we can control not only the spend but also where it's spent. And I think this is where business payments and consumer payments, one of the big differences are there is actually a high degree of control and a high degree of monitoring that can go on if the client wants that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
I think another difference on the business side is that not all business suppliers are going to be accepting cards. They're not all going to be card merchants. And so that acceptance can and has caused issues in the past around businesses or corporates thinking, how widely do I want to roll out this card program, because it actually can't be used with certainty and ubiquity across all of our suppliers. That particular pain point has also been solved more recently, and so what we're seeing in market are propositions around straight-through processing, where the issuer will actually be able to onboard the supplier for payments by card by that merchant. And there's also a concept, to use a sort of payment nerd term, of a BPSB, which is a business payment service provider, that acronym again. But what that does is it's the third-party solution which is able to sit between the buyer and the supplier and enable cards. So if the supplier is not card accepting, you're able to make the payment to this third party. So you use your card for that, and then they run a second leg of payment and forward the funds to the underlying bank account of the supplier. And so that's sort of giving ubiquitous experience.
No, I know exactly what you mean with that one. So now I knew this would happen, but because we're all payments nerds, although one of us is labelled as one, I'm going to have to move on to Kath. But look, I think that we'll circle back. I knew we're going to run short of time because we're all chatterboxes. But thank you, Julian. I think that really encapsulates what this whole thing is about. So, Kath, do you want to dive in now and sort of give us your view from a program manager's perspective of this one? Because you've got, obviously there's a number of different parts of this that come together, and my view is Novatti is sort of the piece that sort of pulls that together. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Brad. Everyone who's watching this webinar probably understands that their company's legacy solutions like cash and manual purchase orders are no longer good enough to achieve these outcomes. Gone are the days where employees would receive their per diems as cash in envelopes before they embarked on their trips. Now businesses can be given tools that allows them to load the employees' cards before or even during these trips. There are no cash handling expenses anymore, but rather an efficient way to pay your staff their per diems. Loading prepaid cards with values prior to spend can be applied across many different types of situations. Think petty cash cards. No longer is there the need for a tin in the top drawer, but rather a card that can be loaded with just enough for the purchase. And then once the purchase has been made, any leftover amount can be removed from the card, and the card can be blocked until it is to be used again. Therefore, a traditional prepaid card solution works well because it gives companies visibility and control over payments without compromise to fraud and security. It is also suitable for industries who want to implement a simple solution.
Cool. So I think the point we need to pick up on is digital wallets, which is key to this as well. So if you look at some, I think Commonwealth Bank have been very vocal about their opinion that this is going to be, I think they, 90% jump in a year. This is definitely the way we're heading. I know my history on this is not good. I have been quite vocal, but I've had to eat a lot of humble pie with our friends at Apple, because the reality is that it's not just the payment. And I think that this is what the piece of the puzzle, the digital wallet piece is not just the payment, it's all the other capability that it has. So I think that's worth zooming in on. The other point I wanted to make is with this business payment space. So CEO of ANZ, Shane Elliott's on the record as saying that if he was going to put his money into payments, it would be the business payment stuff. So we've got some. There's definitely a movement in that, and in some of my notes, I'm going to throw this one in here. But to give you an idea of the size of the pie, the Australian government has a relationship, very deep relationship with Diners Club, and has for a number of years. And you know that I'm a bit of a fan of Diners Club for historic reasons. But the Australian government runs on Diners Club as far as travel and entertainment is concerned, and that gives you an idea of some of the legacy, some of the opportunity, but just the size of that pie. Now, that relationship is enormous. And when you've got that many public servants traveling, renting cars, doing what they need to do, that is absolutely huge. So, look, Kath, let's jump into the secret sauce in this, which is the real-time funding, yeah? So as we pull this puzzle together, we've got digital wallets, we've got Duncan, we've got Julian with Visa. We'll talk to Duncan in a minute. But Catherine, the just-in-time funding piece is what I want to zoom in on, because this is the secret sauce. Do you want to just talk to us about that, how that works in the B2B space, please?
Sure. Let me put up a slide so you can see what I'm talking about. So let's take expense management, the topic that we're talking about, as an example. Employee signs up for an expense card, which, as Julian has mentioned, through an app or internal portal when they join the company. The company, through Novatti, issues a virtual card to the employee, which he or she can start using immediately while the physical card is being delivered. What's special about this card is that it's a prepaid card that carries zero balance and is linked to a ledger either managed by the company or through Novatti. The card technically is never actually loaded with any funds, but rather the ledger would record the balances and transaction history on behalf of the company. As the ledger contains the balances, it is then the ledger that approves or declines the transactions being done by the card. The ledger is then adjusted after each transaction. In this example of expense management, the finance team could set up spend controls for their employees, such as monthly spend limits or transaction limits for different types of transactions. Perhaps they don't want their employees to spend too much on airfares. That is, actually ever get to travel on a plane again. The finance team can monitor transactions and pull reports in real time, which are all integrated into their financial management systems. The same solution can be applied across many different types of disbursement payments, such as gig workers. You can also use to pay your vendors as well. Ledger management is not for everyone though, and at Novatti we'll spend quite a lot of time with clients ensuring the correct understanding of ledger management and determining which ledger is the best to use.
Right, so I'm going to throw to Julian in a second, but I think that piece from Kath is really important because that ledger that sits off to the side is key to all of this. So the card and it's basically splitting those two things aside, and the ledger is what controls everything, and the card then becomes the tool that's used, and obviously that's where you can control the actual transaction happening, but at the back it's funded in real time. That is also the crypto model, so a crypto exchange goes in there. That's also the buy now, pay later model for Afterpay in New Zealand, same thing. So if you want some more information on that slide is public domain, and Kathy would be more than happy to talk to you about it, and I know that I've explained it at least 10 times recently. But once the penny drops on that, I think that's the game changer for me. So Julian, a bit about corporate cards. So do you want to just sort of, now that we've sort of taken that, I think the corporate card program thing is worth zooming in on, yeah?
Yeah, sure, Brad. I mean, just to follow on from Kath, would say that, this is a really interesting product that Novatti has and solution, that ability to be able to fund from the ledger real time is pretty awesome. And as Kath said, will suit many businesses that otherwise might want to go down the credit route. I think it's need to remember that corporate card programs obviously have traditionally been the remit of credit cards and charge cards, and that will still continue. There still will be businesses that want to that want to avail themselves of the credit model, and that's has benefits in terms of working capital, in terms of accessing rewards or rebates. That the prepaid model really opens up the market to another set of businesses, and there are a number of benefits from that. And I think one I'd call out is that it doesn't restrict the business to that set credit limit. So, and especially if we think about corporate card programs and virtual cards being used for supplier payments, as we talked to before. Well, as we know, supplier payments can be lumpy and quite large, and so it can be hard to manage that on a set limit. And so this proposition from Novatti does enable that use case in a great way. We've also seen some of our clients working with enterprise platforms for gig workers and being able to use this model to then enable one-time cards for expenses that gig workers might have within their platform, which is interesting. Government programs are looking at moving into virtual, and there's a host of other use cases.
Yeah, NDIS I think is another good one too. I think that's a really
absolutely
good study. And I think look, this is the, and I'll ask you about, this is the consumerization of the B2B payments experience, really, isn't it? It's sort of, we're taking away the old school sort of 55 days, you've got your charge card, blah, 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 and we're turning that into a more consumer sort of consumerization of it, but getting different benefit, a different set of benefits, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a broad theme within B2B payments, and actually the whole business banking more broadly. So, we've obviously had a real focus on Fintechs and Neos entering the consumer space, and the recent shift has really been the focus on the business sector. And so we are seeing and continue to see great new propositions coming out from these new players in the business space. And we will continue to. There's actually an awesome pipeline coming through, so there's a lot of support for that. And I should say it's not just in the fintech new issuer space, but it's also the traditional banks are doubling down too and enhancing their proposition and consumerising them. So, CBA's come out with some interesting new business propositions of late. NAB announced earlier in the year that it would be issuing a virtual card EMS proposition to its small businesses. So you're really starting to see a change in how these businesses are being serviced with their payment needs, which is awesome. And at Visa, we're obviously helping to implement that and enable it.
Yeah, I just want to do a quick, sorry to interrupt you, I'm going to do a shout out here because Mike Diaz has just said that it's good to see Brad eating humble pie. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Look, I think, as I said, my view on this has been very, very straightforward, which is this is now the time for this to move, right? And I think the benefits are there. The real-time funding, I think, is the secret sauce in this to get prepaid to do what it needs to do to get this business-to-business solution off the ground. But I think there's other things, Kath.
Well, let's not forget
it is, yeah.
Let's not forget the data, right? It's all about the data and the insights that are gained from converting cash payments into card payments, and the ability to extract that data to give you customer insights. And you now know where your cardholders, your employees and your clients are spending, and more often than not, the consumer behaviours you were expecting are actually not what happens. You'll find that you think the cardholder's going to be, your card's going to be used one way, and they're not. So companies can also leverage the data to analyse the spend behaviour and just get all that. It's the data. You say it many times. It's the data.
Data stupid. Yeah, got it. And again, this is what's being missed. I mean, and this was the old school way we used to do it, where you would get all the data and then you'd go off to a hotel chain and say, look how much money we're spending at your hotel. That's a very base model thing to do. I think with the data capturing that you'll have, there's a lot more application for that. So yes, good point. And I think we touched on fraud and cybersecurity, Julian. I think the numbers on that are pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of Visa's really core foundational strengths, and so we continue to maintain fraud below 0.1%, and that's a huge focus. There's obviously been a lot of recent issues with cybersecurity globally, a lot of hacking incidents, and businesses of all shapes and sizes have been affected, and so that's a real concern for businesses. And I mentioned that survey that we've recently done with the business community. Half of the businesses said they're intending to bolster their security and fraud management over the coming year, which sort of shows you how much of a focus this is. And so, yeah, we would obviously say with Visa, that continues to be our focus and really one of our main differentiators. And the benefit also of the virtual cards and the one-off tokens obviously has fraud benefit as well.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm going to throw to Kath in a minute to talk about, yet again, real-time funding, but very hard to do fraud on a zero-balance card, yeah? Well, more difficult, depending on what you're trying to do. So I'll take that as a comment from me. Kath, real-time funding, how do the punters get in contact, yeah?
Well, reach out to us. I've had a few people connect to me on LinkedIn as I've been speaking, so hopefully they're people who've been watching me now. So I
would know that I would use that as a platform.
But no, definitely reach out to us. Myself or our sales team can definitely connect with you and walk you through the solution and help you understand the right type of product and program that you need to run.
Yeah, look, I think people can reach out through any of us. I think we're fairly accessible, but again, it's the secret sauce of the real-time funding. I keep pushing that, but I think that's what's making the crypto cards work. It's working. It's making the buy now pay later cards work, and it will make this work. So, okay, now we've got someone who's sitting there very quietly, being very patient with a very loud T-shirt on. So I want to talk to Duncan about Marqeta. So, Duncan, thank you for your patience. You have been country manager for ANZ region for what now?
4.5 months.
Sorry?
4.5 months.
4.5. Sorry. Okay, 4.5. I thought it was a bit longer. I feel like you've been around for a lot longer, but you have, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a big history in this. So, why don't you just walk us through Marqeta? Because I think, again, another important brand. And what have you got planned for Australia, mate?
Yeah, no, perfect. And I might want to just pull on a couple of threads from the guys and just to kind of reiterate. So yes, I've been around forever and a day. I want to say almost 20 years, but it makes me feel young. So I tend to say just over 15. But a good chunk of that was actually within commercial cards, and I was actually chatting to someone today around a university program, and they shut down their corporate card program. Because they were spending too much. And I think, when we talk about the secret sauce of, kind of real-time funding or just-in-time funding for us, it's around, being able to be really, really creative and be really, really specific around the decisioning that's made. So we can get, very, very granular around, what we would like to approve and what we wouldn't like to approve. So that university can control how much they're spending. Because if they thought a corporate card program, which has got some pretty good controls, and they were spending too much, then what could they do differently through a solution through Novatti to be able to kind of control their spend and to be able to make those decisions at a per transaction level.
Yeah. I think universities have always been a big opportunity, right? I mean, I think not only for the actual employees or staff at the university, but also there's students. We won't go into that, but I think just given the huge volume of people and transactions and movement and everything, it's an absolute Monty for something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right, so we'll kick into my bit.
Yes. And I want to know what you've got planned and what you think. I want your view on what do you think, what next for Australia with this, yeah?
Yep, no, perfect. So I'll just give a bit of a high-level overview on Marqeta. So Marqeta is a card issuing platform. So we I guess a bit of a processing engine that supports some of the transactions to be able to go through. Support tokenization, support kind of the virtual issuance of cards. So to pull some brands off the trophy shelf. Because they're pretty good brands. You might have heard of Afterpay, little startup out of Sydney.
I think I've heard of them, yeah.
Another, I think someone bought them. So Zip, but kind of more relevant to kind of this conversation. So out of the UK, we've got a really cool customer called Capital on Tap, and so they're kind of providing a credit-like facility, but based off this type of solution. So they're providing that sort of ledger side of things, and being able to kind of make those decisions. Brex is another one out of the US who we work with, and we actually do the tokenization for JP Morgan's commercial card program. So we do spin off tokenization.
I remember that announcement. Yeah. I remember the announcement of that. That's a very big opportunity.
Yes, foot in the door opportunity, I think they call that. Let's get in there with tokenization, see what else we can do for them. So that's a little bit, I guess, about kind of what we do. I think we've got a pretty consistent platform globally. So we've got, which is to say, we've got one platform, so we don't have multiple instances everywhere we go. So as a result, the types of customers that we tend to service are fairly consistent. So and whether it be Afterpay here, New Zealand with Novatti, or across the US, Square, and a bunch of places as well, they tend to be quite consistent. So we do like to deal with kind of innovators who are looking at kind of expanding their businesses through cards, and being able to plug into an open API. So I expect from how we kind of grow the business here in Australia and New Zealand to be fairly consistent. It would be supporting some of those US guys coming into market, but also kind of nurturing some of the opportunities that we're seeing along those same sort of ilks that are sprouting up in and around Australia.
Yeah, and look, what's interesting is that I remember when some of these I call them new products, dropped probably 12 months ago, probably before you joined Marqeta, and Marqeta was still running things from offshore. And it was, some of the stuff was so, say jarring, but I mean in a good way, that when you drop these things into the market, our fellow payment nerds spend the best part of a week trying to reverse engineer how they work. And I always find that amusing because they get some of it right, but not all of it right. And there's some really interesting things that the Marqeta does, but it's when you put Marqeta with Novatti and Visa that you actually round out the whole solution. And I think that's where the, dare I say it, synergy actually comes from, is the fact that you can pull all these three together and then make something new. And I think the BNPL cards are a classic example of that. But I do remember the first one that dropped into Australia, and there was mass confusion and lots of messages and a lot of assumptions being made too. And many of them were not correct. But anyway, it's taken us a while, but we've caught up.
Yeah.
I think, to your point, it's a bit of a brave new world, and we need to partner with some companies that've got the appetite to do it. And a lot of the time, they don't know what they don't know, which is the other interesting thing.
Yep, no, absolutely. And I think, being able to kind of lean on, some people have been in and around the business for a while, kind of like yourself, like Kath and Julian, and the team at Visa, to be able to kind of pull that expertise in. A good chunk of our customers aren't necessarily payments nerds, so we need to be able to kind of lean in on that and try and provide not only the technical support but also the payment expertise as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talk for payment too, right? I mean, you know exactly how this all works, and I think there's a certain level of I think payment nerds exactly right, because there's a real depth of knowledge that's required. So I couldn't agree with you more. So Duncan, appreciate your time, thank you. And I know that the first one I did call you out deliberately, and I know you were messaging AJ over at Visa saying, is this live? So now that's why you're here. So we wanted to make sure that you're okay after we wound you up last time. So thank you.
No. As I said, it was the best webinar I ever did. That was a good one.
Oh, we enjoyed not hosting you, so that was okay. So look, I think we're actually running to time. So this is a 45-minute webinar. So we've got a few minutes now as we wrap up. So it's Q&A time. So has anyone got any Qs? I'm happy to give the floor to our colleagues, or I've got some answers as well. So let's have a look and see if we've got any questions. I might throw some of these at you. Here's a curly one. Who do you see as the leaders in the B2B space in payments, banks or fintechs? Julian, what do you think, mate?
Thanks for throwing that curly one to me, Brad.
The answer is both.
Yeah, well, honestly, I mean, obviously, if we go back 5 years, the innovation was absolutely coming from the fintechs, right? And I was in a bank at the time, and we were, we as a bank had to look at how we were innovating and say, we can't be developing product at this rate. We've got to think about the customer experience. We've got to change our processes and all the rest of them. And so there actually has been a huge revolution at all the banks to really relook at how they approach product development and the customer journey. And I think that's been a great thing. But you would say it was probably sparked by that competition from the fintechs. Who's innovating now at the moment? Well, I genuinely do think both are. I think I mentioned it earlier. We're seeing obviously some great new propositions coming into market like Novatti, and we're also seeing enhancements of product that the big banks are bringing into market. So, and they've got to keep up and compete. It's it's getting more competitive out there, and they know that if they don't move and meet expectations and meet that consumer expectation that's really been put on business products, that they're going to lose customers. So I think at the moment I would say both to be neutral.
I think Duncan's going to agree with you. I can see him nodding. I think that the answer is both. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've kind of told people that we don't live in a vacuum. So as we kind of see kind of fintechs coming through and they start to kind of look at getting some sort of market share, banks are always going to sit there and respond. They're not going to sit back and go, oh, okay, we're losing market share. Well, it was us. There's always going to be a response, and I guess that's the tide that kind of rises all the boats, because it's a challenge. How do we respond to that challenge? What are we doing? It then puts it back onto the fintechs. Okay, what's next for you? And that's where we start to see there's really cool partnerships coming into play, which are connecting in kind of more capability to kind of try and raise a fintech's boat, which then challenges again.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're not going to get any disagreement from me. I mean, from what I see from my side of the fence, it is everybody needs to work together. And I think the other thing that's interesting is a lot of the clients are driving the need for some change, and they're going to their bank, and their bank is perhaps not necessarily able to be that bespoke. And I'm not pointing a finger at any banks, but given the way things are structured, sometimes they need a third party. And I think that's sort of the model that's going to start to become more and more common in this space, yeah? Hey, Duncan, I've got a question here about AI. Can I throw this one at you? So this one's a really good question. The role and influence of artificial intelligence in the future of B2B payments. I think that's a ripper of a question.
Yeah, it is, and I think that potentially comes down into your decisioning logic, and how do we identify and kind of protect some of those fraud rules. So I think not only for B2B, but I think that's a really, really good opportunity for payments in general, and how we to continue to combat payment fraud, and I see that as been quite good. Particularly when we start seeing consistent merchant category codes and consistent types of transactions on a particular either client card or kind of portfolio. I think that'll become critical as part of the transaction decisioning process.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I might do this one for you and Kath, right? So I know I've thrown sort of NDIS as another opportunity. We know crypto, we know BNPL, we know the B2B space. Anything that I'm missing? Anything that you two might want to throw in there as another opportunity that I haven't seen?
Yeah, so again, kind of leaning on the trophy shelf, and hopefully I don't knock it over. But
so many victory laps, so many.
Yeah,
Duncan.
But we get really good uptake with kind of on-demand delivery programs as well. With our kind of have either contract workers or gig workers out there, kind of buying on behalf of either that brand or someone else. So certainly see kind of a lot of opportunity in and around that. And I think we kind of we'd always mention that kind of travel sector, and certainly one which I find interesting out of the US, and the kind of testing in the waters here from an Australian perspective is in and around media payments, and how we go, okay, how do we support kind of better media payments for large agencies or large media buyers. Okay, good one. Okay, what about, I think Julian, you haven't had a lot to say for a few minutes, so let me I'm going to give you this one, and I think maybe Kath, you might want to have a think about this one too. What's the 5-year time horizon? What do you think, Julian? You're on mute.
Where are things going in 5 years? Was your question?
Yeah, where do you see the future?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, digitization of business payments is absolute, is like, and I think you've said it too, Brad. There is a lot of manual process, a lot of inefficiency within that space, and so the ability to digitize and bring in things like AI that you were talking about to help with insights and advice and actually automate a lot of these processes, I think is really where we're going to go to. And so it's just making business easier and I guess saving time ultimately for the business owners and even the finance function, so they can concentrate on more strategic decisions and running their business is sort of where I see it. Obviously, there's going to be all sorts of other new products coming out in the market. I think
is there a trading payment that you need to make outside, or is that just something else, man?
Yeah, sorry, that is a trading going on. So there'll be a B2B payment later. Hopefully, he takes virtual cards.
Yeah, we got through the whole thing without him making a noise.
That's right.
But I take the point.
Buy now, pay later in this space, I think, for business is also just something to watch. So it's obviously been the consumer focus, but we have seen an uptick in volume of buy now, pay later in the business portfolio, and you would have noticed a couple of a listing of a buy now, pay later specialist in the business space. There's a couple of those specialists offerings. So that space is starting to warm up too.
And here's the irony, I think, is that buy now, pay later has a lot more in common with charge cards in many respects at a certain end of the transaction than it does necessarily with credit cards. And I think that's why that may be quite a good fit in the business space, because heavily reliant on charge cards and a similar sort of profile, similar sort of, how do I put it, profile. So, yeah, I think that's a watch this space. So, a good point. Look, we are almost at time, and because our hosts are Novatti, Kath, is there anything else you'd like to add? Have I missed anything that you think might be relevant in the space? Do you want to have a final word on that?
Thanks, Brad. No, it's been a fabulous chatting to everybody today. And there's been a few questions in the chat about this webinar being recorded. And yes, it is being recorded, and it will be made available and emailed out to the participants tomorrow. But once again, I've had a fabulous time. Thanks, Bradford. Thanks, Duncan. And thanks, Julian, for your time today. And I look forward to the next time we all nerd out together.
So there will be another one, and I think we'll schedule that fairly soon. So 3 in the series, but I think the theme is end of October. I'm just getting a message now. So I think the theme will be how do we now take this to the next level, and what's the applicable sort of products that we need to have. What are the solutions that we need to have to sort of round this out? So we'll take that into October, and we'll see if we can meet in person at some point. I'm not sure about that, but you never know. So look, on behalf of Novatti, I just want to thank Julian McInerney from Visa, Duncan from Marqeta, because we said his name so often, we had to have him here. So, and that T-shirt's mine, mate. And Catherine, well done. Thank you all very much. We are running exactly on time. So the webinar will be available to watch later. If you have any further questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to take any questions or any comments or any other inquiries that you might have. So on that note, I think I'll sign off and thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.